Welcome to Science Distilled Virtual Edition. I'm Megan Collins, and today we'll be reflecting on how technology has helped us overcome the challenges of 2020. Joining us are 4 Nevada leaders in education, business, and healthcare. If you are watching us live on YouTube, welcome, thank you. You are welcome to put your questions in the comment box at any time. We'll be taking those questions in the second half of the event. Likewise, if you have connected with us on Slido, so slido.com, our event code is #overcome2020, and you can enter your questions there as well. Science Distilled is co-hosted by the Terry Lee Wells Discovery Museum and the Desert Research Institute. I would like to introduce Patrick Turner to tell us a little bit about the Discovery.
Thanks, Megan. For those of you who haven't visited the Discovery, we're in downtown Reno, 490 South Center Street, just south of the casino core down here. We are a hands-on science center. We're 67,000 feet of a variety of ways to explore science. And we are very proud of this partnership with DRI. I believe this is our 5th year of the Science Distilled series. And although we have had to move to a virtual platform, I'm still very optimistic about how this series is going and glad that everybody has joined us today.
Thank you so much, Patrick. The Desert Research Institute is the environmental research arm of the Nevada system of higher education, and our science drives solutions for a changing planet. And as part of that, we like to bring the great ideas and the great people behind those ideas in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and STEM as part of this Science Distilled series. We'd like to thank Patagonia and Imbibe Custom Brews for their ongoing support. Patagonia is normally our host at its Reno location, and it is there where Imbibe pours the beverages. Eventually, when it is safe to get back together, we'll be able to raise a glass to their support as we normally do. For now, you can do that at home, BYOB style. So thank you again for joining us. Let's get started with our event themed Using Technology to Overcome the Challenges of 2020. As you are very aware, public health, education, work, and the way we connect with friends and family look very different now than they did 1 year ago. Today, we'll hear from leaders right here in Nevada who have been using technology to connect us, to maintain crucial services, to keep businesses moving, and to keep our kids learning. I'd first like to introduce Jackie McCune, who's a professional learning facilitator at the Northwest Regional Professional Development Program. Jackie, what does Rpdp do, and what are the benefits to educators of this organization statewide?
Hi. So the Regional Professional Development Programs in Nevada are funded by the state of Nevada with the sole purpose to provide professional development to educators. We actually have 3 of them in the state. There's one in Las Vegas, which serves all the southern counties, one in Elko that serves the northeastern counties, and then the one in Reno, which serves the northwest counties, which is where I'm located. Each of the Rpdps is focused on supporting educators. That's what we're all about. We do this through professional learning, collaboration, mentoring, or coaching even. Our intent is really to just foster learning experiences where new information can be shared, teachers can learn new things, and then implement it in the classroom in a very low-key, low-pressure way. There's many different benefits to educators in using the regional professional development programs. First of all, sometimes we just, as human beings, we get wrapped up in our day-to-day activities, and we become hyper-focused on doing what we've always done because it's familiar and it's what works. In education, things are constantly in flux. We are frequently faced with new students who have different skill sets or different backgrounds. Every year or every semester, we get a new set of students. Standards or expectations change. There's frequently new research that comes out that shows beneficial instructional methods, and teachers, they're in the classroom all day long, and they don't necessarily have the time to stay up to date with everything or to do their own research. So that's where we come in. All of our training is research-based. It's based on best practices and good instructional design. All of us are teachers. We may not be in the classroom right now, but we were in the classroom. We know what it's like. We know what those expectations are. We try our best to get into the classroom to support teachers, to stay connected with them. And there's just times that new information needs to be shared, or teachers just want a little boost, or they want to shake up their instruction, or they're just looking for their own professional learning to change. And that's where we can help them. Because we all know ultimately good instruction leads to increased student achievement levels, which is really the goal of everybody. So we really are just here to support teachers, including principals, and however we can help the schools.
So my guess is that teachers and administrators turned to Rpdp first when they needed to pivot to distance learning. And I'm excited to hear more about that as we continue our conversation. Next, I'd like to introduce Sina Lloyd, who is the Director of Research and Workforce Development at Blockchains. Sina, for people who haven't heard of it, what is Blockchains? What does it do? And what do you do in your role?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So Blockchains, like the name implies, works to implement blockchain technology. So as a company, that's what we are focused on doing. The public blockchain technology is a digital database that contains information that is logged and stored in blocks, and that can be simultaneously used and shared within a decentralized, publicly accessible network. And we believe that blockchain technology can, should, and will make an impact on humankind for the better. Emphasize the for the better right there. So our team is dedicated to creating solutions and frameworks to allow everybody to be their own agents in a decentralized future. And we want to reimagine everything and empower everyone. And I know those are strong statements, but that is what we're out here to do. So as the Director for Research, that piece of my title, our team assists in finding information that's needed to move our products forward and to move the company forward. As a trained librarian and former director for the Carson City Library, this comes naturally. One of the transformative things that we worked on extensively at the library was reimagining how we serve the community to meet the needs of the community. This included adding workforce development programs with local partners, and this happens to fit well with the other half of my title, which is workforce development. So Blockchains, the company, is working to establish educational opportunities for students to enter well-paying technology careers. And those are areas beyond a high school diploma, but don't quite require a 2-year degree. And this enters the Blockchain Education Initiative. We are piloting offering dual credit Blockchain 1 and 2 courses in 4 high schools in partnership with 2 community colleges this fall.
I'm sure the skills that you are teaching, particularly in the area of taking our identity back, are super relevant to students as they spend more and more of their lives online. So looking forward to chatting more about that. Here with us from Las Vegas is Brian Hager, who is the Executive Director of the UNLV Medicine Ackerman Center for Autism. Brian, what is the Ackerman Center? Who does it serve? And tell us why people on the autism spectrum were particularly impacted by the need to be socially distanced during the pandemic.
Yeah, hi, thank you. We're a multidisciplinary medical center for children with autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. We provide diagnostics and therapy services for children birth to 21, and we partner with Grant a Gift Autism Foundation in assisting with finding services for all ages of folks on the autism spectrum. Children with autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders were directly impacted by the pandemic in a number of ways. One of those being schools closed and they lost their access and their ability to work within their independent education teams. Also, social distancing and social isolation has led to the lack of daily routine and the structure, which maintaining that routine induces a sense of discipline as well as safety in our children, which is important for the psychological and emotional development of our children. A lack of that routine also attaches the uncertainty, which can make children with autism feel more anxious, more grumpy, more restless, and develop some of these unpleasant feelings surrounding the social distancing and the isolation.
And I'm gonna give a little teaser for our audience. Pivoting to telehealth has been a really important service for the Ackerman Center, and we will explore that more in a few minutes. But first, I want to introduce our fourth panelist, Rachel Kingham. She's the community manager at the Reno Collective, a co-working space. Rachel, can you give us some examples of the work that the members of the Reno Collective do? And how does the Reno Collective support those small businesses, gig workers, and upstarts?
Yeah, of course. So the Reno Collective, as you said, is a co-working space. We just turned 10 years right during the COVID shutdown, celebrate our 10th anniversary. So what we provide is a workspace for independent workers. And those are people who are freelancers. They are people who are remote employees, so perhaps work for a company that's based in Delaware or in North Carolina. They're also independent contractors and small business owners. And so we have quite a variety of people. Some people are sole proprietors or LLCs. Some people have employees that work for them. So we have a combination of bosses and employees, if you will, that work out of the space. And as far as backgrounds, I was realizing that we've sort of have every career covered from archaeology to web design. We have got an archaeologist that is currently RVing around the world doing his job and also creating a podcast. We have a number of web designers that work out of our space. We have some terrific, we've got a PhD student, we have web programmers, we have a person who's working on a dentistry implant process. So it is extremely varied. Accountants, writers, inventors. So it's a really varied space. And what we do is we provide not just that workspace, which right now, and we'll talk about in a bit too, is limited simply because of the number of people that can fit in the space and also the number of people that are feeling safe being with other people in a smaller space. But along with that in-person physical workspace, we also offer an online community. And while we've done that for a number of years, it's been sort of, on and off, if you will. And right now it is strengthened quite a bit during this time, which we'll talk about in a second.
For me, in our conversations leading up to this, it has been inspiring to hear how your group is kind of the glue that's keeping these independent contractors and gig workers together. So looking forward to hearing more about that. This year, in addition to the term unprecedented, resilience has been another term that we've heard a lot in the news and in our own communities. And it's related to overcoming challenges. What does resilience mean to each of you? Sina, do you want to go first?
Sure, let's unmute myself. Did you guys not hear me the first time, I'm guessing? So perseverance to me, or resilience to me is perseverance and moving forward in difficult times.
Love that. How about you, Rachel?
Me too. For me, resilience has really come to mean reevaluating your purpose, looking at it, perhaps redefining it, and then moving forward as best you can at that point.
Great. Jackie?
I see resilience as really tapping into inner strengths that we may not use every day, but are just, they're there, but we don't really use them maybe to overcome difficulties or difficult situations.
Brilliant. And Brian?
Resilience for me is that ability to adapt to the change, to adapt to the new environment, and reinvent what you have to stay relevant to those changes and relevant in the new normal that we're living in.
Jackie, we've heard a lot in the news about how teachers across the nation have faced the immense challenges when pivoting to distance learning, but a lot of people don't know what that looks like. So what techniques and technologies are educators in Nevada using to bring lessons to students?
So technology and education, it's really an interesting thing right now, because COVID-19 completely changed the way instruction is delivered to students. It changed the way in which we use technology in the classroom. Before the pandemic hit, technology was used to enhance the instructional experience or the educational experience of students. Now, however, it's a necessity for all stakeholders, including teachers, students, parents, support staff, everybody. So the transition definitely was not smooth in all intent. I equate it to trying to turn the Titanic, but really only having the amount of time and space to move a kayak or a canoe. We had to do it very quickly with very little wiggle room. So our goal was to shift the focus to the immediate needs of teachers, specifically in using technology, because that's what they needed. And it's been amazing to watch them. One of the biggest changes was moving to a distance blended or hybrid model of teaching, where students were online part of the time or now in person. That was definitely not the case in the spring. That required students to have devices, to have broadband, to have the tools necessary. And some families didn't have all of those things. So that was one hurdle that had to be overcome. Each district since then has designated platforms that they use district-wide. So some districts are using Google for education tools. Some school districts are using Microsoft or Canvas or different other learning platforms, which is great for students and families because it keeps it consistent. Teachers have been creating their own videos. Prior to this, teachers never wanted to be on screen, where we would be way more comfortable in front of 50 kids teaching a lesson than on a screen. But now teachers are making their own videos to instruct students, which is phenomenal. They're creating their own YouTube channels with information. Video conferencing tools have been used significantly to support students, to deliver instruction, to help parents, and also for collaboration between teachers. One of the greatest things that I have seen come out of this in Nevada is a team of digital engineers, which was an initiative started by Superintendent Ebert. It's part of the Digital Learning Collaborative, and they are building tools and resources for teachers to use to help them. So even though there's a lot of tools out there, there is some focus in how they're using them, and teachers are becoming more and more creative every day to make instruction just like it was for students when they were in the classroom.
It's so exciting. A lot of good and unexpected things coming out of this time. Sina, the Blockchain Education Initiative, you mentioned that it's being piloted in 4 schools. Can you talk more about that initiative, how it's helping students, and what you're doing right now during the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. So Blockchain 1, or in the dual credit world, CIT 280, which is an introduction to blockchain, and Blockchain 2, which is CIT 281, which is intermediate blockchain, are for high school students that are dually enrolling college. So we're partnering both with Truckee Meadows Community College and Western Nevada Community College to offer these courses. So the students will come out of this with college credit, as well as credit earned towards their graduation, and we're hoping a lot of skills along the way. So each school is adapting to the requirements placed on them by their district of how they're going to teach. Is it a hybrid model? Is it where you actually have a hybrid model where you have students who are fully online and fully in the classroom at the same time, which I personally think would be a nightmare, but there are teachers who are being extremely resilient and are able to make this work. And it's really great to see their enthusiasm for the curriculum and for the students' ability to learn, overcoming, like Jackie was saying, the fear maybe of putting it out there and teaching it. So in these courses, they learn an introduction to the technology. And towards the end of Blockchain 2, they have a brief introduction to what it would be like to code for a blockchain technology. So it uses similar scripts to like a JavaScript or C+ or Python that you hear of, but it uses Solidity. And so they'll be coding in that environment on the Ethereum blockchain towards the end of spring of this coming year. And this prepares students for careers in technology, even if they're not intending to become computer programmers. So we want to make sure that people are aware of blockchain technology and how it can help organizations, whether or not they're going to actually be the ones coding it. Blockchain technology and its implementation is really 80% or so procedural changes and like 20% technology changes. And so that's what we're getting them ready for.
That is really helpful. I can imagine that the skills needed to navigate the technological world are much like the literacy in finances or these very basic life skills. So really glad you all are working on that. Brian, because of the pandemic, you and your organization advocated for changes in the way telehealth operates under insurance and your relationship to that insurance. Why is the telehealth option important for people who receive healthcare, especially people with autism?
Yeah, telehealth became vitally important during this pandemic. It's always been around, just never utilized. As you know, we're falling under the stay-at-home orders. Patients didn't feel comfortable coming to the clinic, and telehealth gave us that ability to reach the patients in their home, still provide the services that they need. On our therapy side, it proved extremely beneficial because we were still able to keep our group social skills. So it was a bit different. We weren't in a classroom setting, but we were in one of these Zoom calls and we were able to see each other face to face without a mask on and practice the social skills needed, which is some of the work that we do with our autism clients. It gave us that ability to see into the patient's home, see how they interacted with their parents, what distractions were in the house. We were able to give some tips on developing that routine, developing that structure, trying to instill that sense of normalcy in our lives, in the home life, whether it's school at the table and then dinner at the table, but still a block structure time of things that students can follow. And also on the diagnostic side, it gave us the ability for intakes and medication refills that we can do face-to-face with our patients, Zoom in and have them update us on what's going on, share some of the stories, some of the behaviors that their children are experiencing and showing during this time, and give some tips of things to work on, things to push your children towards, helpful resources out in the community. And we're able to continue to reach those families in the rural areas that maybe didn't have the ability to come in for services.
One of the things that I've loved hearing about is in this time where necessity is the mother of invention, or necessity makes these adaptations more quick. What we've seen is a greater diversity of options that probably won't go away after this. And we're going to come back to that further along in the conversation. Rachel, I'm going to turn to you now because we've been talking about resilience, and I would love to hear, or for you to share with our audience, what have you been proud of about how some of the members of your community have shown resilience during the pandemic, and maybe some specific examples of how people through this network have helped each other in the small business sector.
Yeah. The small business sector, the independent worker, that group is very siloed a lot of the time. So they're working, literally independently, and they might find themselves, whether it's, mentally feeling lonely, or whether it is just socially, apart originally before the pandemic. So co-working gave gives the opportunity to be with other people while you're working. You may not be working with them, but you're working in the same room, and there's that energy. And one of the things that I'm extremely proud of with our community is that they kept that alive. Like I said, the online communication, some of the communities that we've built, the different programs that we've used, continued to grow, and people continue to be engaged. We saw a lot of people actively participating and supporting each other. So a lot more collaboration took place. It was as if, there was, for some people, there was a need for more work, and so needing to make more money, and they reached out, or maybe they reached out to us and we reached out for them to the community, and people replied. The joy of live television is I currently have a 5-year-old asking me for juice. So just ignore that if you can hear that. But we did, I'm very proud of the fact that the community did pull together and was able to not only support each other through collaboration and working for each other or hiring each other, but also we saw a huge amount of money being put into local businesses. And so people sharing, this is a community that was used to going to their local bar or local restaurant, for lunch, or it might be after work, that kind of a thing, and weren't able to do that. And so we're finding ways, like Coffee Bar is one of our neighbors, a very close neighbor, and we work with them in providing caffeine to our members. And a bunch of our members, when Coffee Bar shut, they were buying coffee to be delivered. They were buying gift cards, things like that we saw happening. And it just went right into our local economy. And that was really, we were really proud of that. We being the team, the core that is the Reno Collective, it was wonderful.
It's funny because just this week alone, I think I've heard maybe 2 or 3 times people point out examples of how these shared experiences that we're going through have brought out sometimes the best in people. And I find that really heartwarming. Sina, in your previous role, you were awarded Nevada Library Association's Librarian of the Year. What drives you personally when it comes to education and technology?
Yeah, so, here's a quote from one of our partners, which is the school district at the library, and one of their teachers. And it was, "We're preparing students for jobs in the future that do not yet exist." And this is something that you can find on one of the library's videos from 2014. And for example, Ethereum, the public blockchain that we use at Blockchains, strive to build on and ensure an open public blockchain and ecosystem, was not yet invented. It was introduced 1 year later. So we really are preparing students for jobs in the future that do not yet exist. And it's really exciting. Like we're talking about telemedicine, but what's next? We don't know. And, we're helping to prepare these students so that they can invent it and then they can operate it.
I think that feeling of hope is what I wish that everyone leaves this conversation with. Thank you for sharing that with us, Sina. Brian, now that some people with autism are receiving care from home, telehealth enables your staff, as you mentioned, to see the environment and social interactions with families. Why is this significant, and what other possibilities might this open up for the future?
Yeah, it's significant so our therapists can see how the child's interacting with the parent, tips and tricks that the parent may be doing with the child, some of those positive reinforcements versus negative reinforcements, other distractions around the house, whether the child's trying to focus on school and they have the TV going in the background, plus the dog barking at them, and then mom and dad working at the same table while they're in school. So we're able to visualize the home and help them navigate through this time. It also gives us the opportunity, as therapy for our autism services traditionally haven't been reimbursed through insurance via telehealth. With the pandemic, it opened that door for these reimbursements. So one of the struggles that we always faced was locking down a parent meeting. So part of our therapy is working with the parents too. It's not just the children. And it's given us the ability to reach the parents wherever they are. So if we just need to have that one-on-one with the parent and they're at work, they can step out and take a call. and we could get reimbursed for those services, so we can continue to grow our programs. And other areas that I can see it improving is reaching those rural communities. There's folks out there in the rural area of Nevada that need services, but they lack the access. There's no providers out there, and they can't necessarily afford to drive into the city for therapy services, especially 5 days a week, let alone 1 day a week. So hopefully expanding those services to the areas that are less fortunate and they lack access.
A theme that's emerging as I'm listening to you all is that there are programs that are kind of reaching through the technology to continue to connect people. And I hear that with the parent meetings, as well as going kind of beyond the geographic boundaries. And we'll touch on that later, but that is going to be one of the most salient memories for me this year, is how the technology has continued to connect us despite the distance. And on that same topic, Jackie, could you share a story or an anecdote about a teacher who made a difference in a student's life during this time?
Yes, I'd love to. There's so many great stories of things that educators did during COVID and are continuing to do. It definitely has not stopped. So it's hard to really narrow it down to one person, but I love that you mentioned the connectedness through technology, because when schools close, that feeling of connection to their peers is what students miss the most. We saw a lot of concerns with students not having that connection, which is part of school. It's a social event, So there's one teacher, he was the band director at Carson Middle School, and I feel like he really went above and beyond to make sure his students felt connected to one another and weren't completely cut off from music, which is what they were all very passionate about. He was able to, through trial and error, have different rehearsals with students and with groups or sections of the band. And by the end of the spring, before school was out, he did a Zoom concert recording where every student in the band played their part on Zoom. He recorded it, he put it on YouTube so that families could see it. So these students who had worked so hard all year to improve and prepare for their spring concert could still perform. And I felt like it was a very moving moment for those kids, and a great way to show how powerful technology could be in education to connect those kids.
That story brings a smile to my face, and it makes me imagine that the grandchildren of those children will someday hear about that experience, being part of a band on Zoom, and comparing it to whatever the current way of sharing music of the day is, much like we hear about stories from our grandparents from World War II and think, wow, so we're thinking about what it was like during COVID. That story brings a smile to my face. So this is a question for everyone now. You've described new ways to solve new problems with technology, but it hasn't stopped there. We've heard a lot about the life skills or kind of personal victories that you, your students, your clients, or the young people in your life have learned facing these challenges. Can you each share an example of that, some of those life skills that someone in your life has learned during this time? And I will not call on you. I will just let whoever feels inspired to go first.
I'll go ahead. I think a couple of life skills. One is patience, and that would be an example of that, where I think a lot of us have learned patience through Zoom and some of the technologies that we're trying to adapt to. And then the other is flexibility. Just learning to sort of take a breath, be a little bit flexible what you're trying to work with. And I guess that comes with a little bit of grace as well for yourself and for others. I think those are things I've seen in myself, our community, or like my co-working community in specific, but also I think our community at large, and especially in children. I've been amazed, and in no small part to the teachers, Jackie, that, you know, how they have adapted to what's going on right now.
I love hearing that.
I would kind of echo that in a sense of ability to adapt to change. I mean, at the start of it, and still here we are 9 months into it, things are changing on the daily. And we have to quickly reinvent and rethink about the things that we do. Jackie said it earlier, you know, where teachers will stand up in front of a class of 50, but when I think about going on Zoom or like a TV session for that. Also with the ability to come out of your comfort zone and reach out to your community partners, people that you would think as your competitors, may be able to help you kind of get through this and adapt. And how can we still provide the services that we need, or you know, reach out to the people that we need during this time. And thinking quickly and adapting to the change was a huge life skill that I feel like I'm still learning, and I try to motivate the staff and our students to do. Of, you know, just because we've done things a certain way doesn't mean it's the right way 100% of the time moving forward.
That is an excellent point about competitors becoming allies or part of our support network. That's great.
So I agree with Brian that adaptation has been a huge shift. It's this new life skill where, you know, we do kind of have to go with the flow and accept that things might not go as planned, and that's okay. Which is where I also feel like exercising grace and understanding has been really big for everybody. I see it in a lot of people, which is so great to see in public and to hear, you know, just having that grace and understanding towards individuals, and also for ourselves, and being okay when things don't go as planned.
Yeah, and I want to echo the, you know, competitors coming together. So, you know, rather than just going through a pandemic and organizing my own, you know, homework schedule and working in the office, I also decided to run for office. And so I've been having lots of communication with my community. And I think that communication and connection is key. You know, in this time where we have a pandemic, where we are not necessarily connecting with the resources that, you know, just even our neighbors outside of our homes, you know, making sure we are having those conversations and are working together. And though we might not agree on everything, we do have more in common than we have that is not in common. I think that's important.
Second that. That is a really great message to hear right now. So thinking about the future, someday COVID will be in our memories, not in our present. What innovations in technology or the way we organize around technology as communities do you think will stick in the post-pandemic future? We've heard a lot of benefits. What do you think is going to stick?
For me, I truly hope telehealth and the access and reimbursement to telehealth sticks, to continue to reach those rural partners, obviously, but also leveraging that technology and not being afraid to use it. Where there's, I mean, we joke all the time, how many meetings could be done via email? How many meetings could be done just on a quick Zoom call? Let's not be afraid of the technology, and yet embrace it, because we've had to during this time. So to shy away from it afterwards would almost seem like a step back for that.
I would kind of echo what I was saying before, but so my generation, so I'm a millennial, and we were the first generation that supposedly couldn't build shelter. But this next generation are the ones that supposedly can't build relationships. And I think, saying that I hope that this technology allows us to use technology for the better and remain connected and, not self-isolated on our smart device or something like that.
I think, especially today, as a little backstory to my own day, it started with my husband finding that a colleague had tested positive for COVID, and continued with my children being, kept at home today, about to meet one now. And then I continue with my own, staying at home and making all of those decisions. And telehealth became a part of that. Being able to connect with a doctor, being able to, connect with the teachers, having that ability so that there was someone that could, spend the time today as school, and they wouldn't miss out on that. But yeah, telehealth and using communication wisely is very important.
First, Rachel, I love that your son just popped in. Like, that is just, it's our world, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And I feel like that is one of the great things about technology, is it has connected us as human beings. We all have this idea of or perception of this is how somebody is living in their life. They have this, perfect space to do work, but in reality, we all have distractors. But to your point, Megan, I feel like this has really shifted the educational model in the United States and probably the world. In the past, it was kind of this one size fits all. Everybody goes to school 5 days a week. Everybody takes the same classes except for your electives in high school. And or you do it all online by yourself. Well, now we have these different models where they're being tested. They're not perfect yet, but they will get there for students. And I expect that in the future, students will have an option to go to school 5 days a week, or to do a hybrid model, or to do it online. And I think that prepares them for college and even for jobs of the future as well.
I want to add something to that. The ability for us to access educators around the world, even educators around the country. It's one of the things that we're trying to do with our members, is to access courses that might, expand their knowledge in their field, that are available online, and us doing the research and us doing the sort of curation of what those courses, could be, that could help, a programmer expand his clientele base, things like that. But yeah, even, my kids took a class at the Metropolitan Museum of Art that, was like a tour through the Met, and then there was a coloring sheet at the end, and, they've never been to the Met, and now they have, with an instructor. And that's just, it's fascinating. I think a lot of those things were available to us, but we just hadn't taken advantage of them. And it's amazing to have the opportunity.
Yeah, one thing that I'm hearing from all of you is that technology cannot keep us apart. Building on what Sina said about, building relationships through technology and how it might be generational, I think that one thing that's going to stick is that these devices aren't going to keep us down, and technology we won't let it dehumanize us. And I think this conversation is a testament to that. I would like to turn to Allie to see if there are any questions from our audience.
Speaking of technical issues that are trying to be resolved, I don't have any questions coming through on YouTube at the moment. I was curious if we had anyone with us right now who maybe has a question, or Maureen. Yep.
Yes, I can go on forever with questions, so I'll ask a few, and this is kind of for two people combined. It's for Sina and Brian. So it was in regard the blockchain. I have a degree in computer engineering from ages ago, so I've been programming all my life. my first thought was there is some sort of was a broad range of autistic people, some who have got tremendous concentration skills, etc. And I can imagine it'd be a great tie-in for maybe some autistic people to actually be great programmers in the blockchain environment. And I'm also wondering what efforts are being done in that field to try and get diversity in place. One particular point I'm bringing up here, the number of females that are in computer programming has actually fallen despite all efforts. You know, I think, I don't have the figures in front of me, but maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was maybe slightly more than 50% of the graduates in computer engineering might have been female. Now it's more like 42 or something. I completely made those figures up, but the essential aspect, we've gone against the grain of what we would like to achieve in increasing diversity. So there's some questions as that you guys going on.
I guess I'll take the first shot at, I'll go with the second part of that question first. And, you know, our company is rather diverse. It is less diverse in the coding, the heavy coding area. That being said, we are working with the school districts to ensure that the courses that we are offering are as diverse as, has a diverse offering as possible, so that all individuals are encouraged to participate. And I'm not sure, but Jackie may know a little bit more about how that's working in the school districts themselves. And real quickly, you know, I don't disagree that individuals with, I would say, sometimes extraordinary abilities could excel in certain areas, maybe more than others. And I think that that should also be encouraged.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Maureen. And it's one of the things that our partner Grant-A-Gift works heavily on is these vocational outreaches. We have current partnerships with Subway and then a couple other small businesses in town, but looking to expand our vocational outreach to connect, you know, the employers with some of these young adults, some of these students that could be relatively high functioning, and bridging that gap and not letting them be afraid of it, right? Building that comfort skill from the patient side and then building that comfort skill from the employer side. Expanding that outreach and expanding those training opportunities is definitely something that Grant-A-Gift is looking to expand in the near future.
So if it's okay, I'm going to chime in just a little bit to, like, Sina kind of like plugged it in there, but in case you were not aware, there was actually a state law passed a few years ago, and the purpose of the law was to write K-12 computer science standards. So now all students in grades K through 12 receive instruction in computer science. The purpose or the intent behind this bill was not just to say all kids need to learn computer science, but also to increase the enrollment of underrepresented populations. So that includes gender, minorities, abilities, disabilities, everything, geography, you know, to make sure that even students in Battle Mountain, for instance, are getting the same computer science education as they might be in Las Vegas or Reno or Carson City. And what I'm going to connect this back to the COVID situation is that I have found in this that there have been a number of students that I've worked with, or teachers who have reached out to me on behalf of their students, where their kids are suddenly very interested in computer science because they have used these technologies and they want to improve them, or they want to change them, or they want to create their own to meet their needs. So it's kind of like a side benefit of what's happened in this pandemic is it's motivated students to look into computer science a little bit more.
And then I just also wanted to plug, so our pilot is in 4 schools now. And we will be looking in the future to expand that, hopefully to the entire state of Nevada at some point in time. And so our goal is to get this curriculum in front of as many students as possible.
I love hearing about this great work. I'm curious if any panelists have questions for the others. Rachel, you mentioned.
Yeah, so it's funny when Jackie was talking about students looking for new ways of, of programming their own way of doing things. I can probably name about 7 or 8 programmers currently trying to create their own Zoom version of Zoom that would be, the next step up. One of the things that I wanted to touch on was the Reno Collective is not the only, co-working space in Reno. And because of the loss of that sort of comfort and safety of being in a small physical space, not only are members working, a majority of our members are choosing to work from home, but in general, a lot of us, and maybe even based on the screens of ours, where our Zoom cameras are, I think a couple of us are at home currently. That work from home landscape and how COVID has obviously forced us for a while into working from home. And we've been learning a lot about that. And one of the things that we have found that is very helpful is technology in the way that we can continue to connect with people. And so much of our work in just the co-working business is about how to serve the needs of people who don't want to be working from home and they want to have a better environment and improve their environment by working outside of the home, whether it's, some people work great in a coffee shop. I find that I can't. So co-working works for me. But it's having to now navigate how do you improve your work from home landscape. And a lot of co-working businesses are talking about this. No one has reinvented the wheel yet, but so much of it is based on communication. And sometimes it's Zoom, sometimes it's sending a random text. But improving that space, going back to what we talked about grace and such. But then also that, the adaptation of, okay, I've got my desk. Do I need better lighting? Do I need to move into this space and say, okay, I've got to get a better video camera or web camera for my computer so that I can do these meetings better. I need to create better rules of the household so that children stay in one space and I can do my work in the other space. But it's just an acknowledgement to so many of us that are working from home now, whether it's by choice or whether we're unable to make that choice.
Have there been insights in your families and home situations about the way that technology integrates into your home lives and blends the personal and professional? Does anyone else want to share any insights on that?
So I can share. My husband, he is a computer engineer, even though he works for a local utility company. That is his degree. So he has always been kind of a techie guy. And I just recently got into the computer science stuff 4 or 5 years ago, seriously into it for education. But my son really gravitates to it. He loves it. He's really interested in it. If I, left him alone with a bunch of computer parts, he would find some way to build a computer. He could do it. I could not do that. That building a computer does not interest me, but he could do it. And so during, when they were at home, learning or using technology where it used to be a reward for him, where he could have computer time or whatever, it became a necessity. And so he was able to see how he and his sister had to use it for schoolwork, how sometimes I had to use it for work, my husband. And at first there were 4 of us at home. All of us had, without fail, a video conference at the same exact time. And it doesn't always work well. And, it was good for them to see how it all works out. And they learned a lot about Wi-Fi and broadband. And, it was a good experience for all of us.
Immersive lab. Sina, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so my office is like in the sunroom, and I found out the hard way that the freezer in the garage plus the compressor to fill up tires makes the power shut down in this room. And so, making sure I'm not on a presentation, or like right now, the husband, I'm like, you cannot use the internet, you cannot use any electricity. He's like, okay, I'm going golfing. But it's things like that that you don't know until you are trying to use something to capacity.
Brian, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've been at work, coming into the office every day, which I definitely feel for those that are working from home. I've tried it a day or two, and I've had zero success with it. That structure and routine is definitely key in my life. So hands off too, but just that acknowledgement that technology is bringing us together in that sense, but taking a break from technology is being helpful as well. Getting out, enjoying the nature, and taking some time away from the screen time, away from the video calls is, helpful and reassuring to our mental and our psychological state, definitely.
I second that for sure. Earlier this year, DRI hosted a conversation with the Chief Science Officer of NASA. So this was somebody who was about to launch the Mars rover, and he's on the bleeding edge of technology innovation for that area. And his spirit of innovation and curiosity really made an impression on me. And I see that in each of you in different ways. And you don't separate the innovation from its context and from our society. And the question that that we ended on, that conversation with the Chief Science Officer at NASA, was, what do you hope will be the next generation? What technologies do you hope the next generation will benefit from in your field? And I am curious for each of you, what do you hope the next generation, whether that's next year or in 5 years or 10 years, what do you hope comes next after we've learned and adapted in so many different ways? What comes next for this blending of community, technology, family life, and the personal resilience? What do you see as next, or what do you hope for the world?
I'll kick that off. What drew me to blockchains was their, their very lofty mission, their very lofty goals. And I really do feel that establishing a foundation on blockchain, but with technology that allows us to take back our identity, so we can own our own medical records, we can own our own information, is the key to us being able to succeed in the future.
I hope for that too. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you're.
So one of the things that I have been working with for the last year or so is virtual reality and augmented reality in the classroom, and how it can really enhance the educational experience. You can see a frog right in front of you in this augmented reality and dissect it when you couldn't, if you can't dissect a real frog, and one of the things I was playing around with in the spring when all the schools closed is how to hold class sessions in a virtual reality meeting room, for lack of a better term. And so some colleagues and I, we held meetings, virtual meetings, much like this, but in these virtual reality rooms. And it was very surprising to me to see that when we were in these VR rooms, even though you're only there as an avatar, you feel like you're more part of something, because you can look around and you can see what's going on. And so there's some new technologies coming out where you can build like these classroom experiences with displays and information and all kinds of things. And I feel like it's really just going to improve exponentially in the next year. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I hope that it becomes less expensive for the tools, but I'm really excited to see where it goes, because I feel like it's going to be a game changer, not just for education, but also for businesses that are trying to train their employees.
Wonderful.
I would definitely, build on that and hope that technology in healthcare continues to advance. Where sometimes it's a chore and we have to take half a day off to go to the doctors across town, or we have to travel out of state to get the quality healthcare that you may need. That if we can continue to build on it and continue to provide that access and that quick care via technology, that we can reach more people and continue to advance the achievements and the discoveries within the healthcare setting.
Rachel, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I guess I would quickly add something to do with our attention, something to do with us being able to spend more time on something. So that's very vague, but I remember social media comes to my mind, and the way we are such, the doom scrolling, or our attention is held by such little bits and little pieces. To find a way to take back, like Stina said, with identity, but to also take back that idea of my attention being a commodity. And I'm not really sure what that means or what that would look like. So it's for the next generation to figure out, but that idea.
That is a great wish to put out there. I am coming away from this conversation really inspired. Thank you all so much. Before we close, I want to give Patrick an opportunity to share an exciting upcoming event that the Discovery is hosting.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, normally this time of year, the Discovery would be hosting our annual fundraiser in the building, which is called Chemistry of the Cocktail. Obviously, the time is not right for an event like that. So we've pivoted this year in the spirit of this topic today and come up with a televised fundraiser called Science Cast. We're billing it as a science variety show and fundraiser, and it will air Saturday, November 14th at 7 p.m. on KRNV, which for most of us is Channel 4, but it'll also stream on their website as well. So we hope that you'll join us then for what looks to be a pretty fun show so far.
Thank you so much. Patrick, Brian, Sina, Rachel, Jackie, and Allie. Thank you, Maureen, for joining us in the Zoom. Thank you to everyone who's watching live and on demand. We are so glad that we continue to stay a community despite the distance. The next Science Distilled event is January 27th. It's on the Science of Winter, so save the date. And until next time, thank you so much.